Hello and welcome back to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast. It is me again, Mark, and I am joined by two awesome guests. I'm really excited about this. I've just called Craig a guest, actually. He's a host. So scrap that. But we've got podcasting royalty with us. Sam from the Electricians podcast is here. He isn't just the number one electrical podcaster. As far as I'm aware, he's the number one construction-based podcaster. So we're going to start with you first. How are you, Sam?
What's a load of nonsense? I'm just a guy who does a podcast and likes to talk about nonsense. So that's all
That's
it
true.
is.
You do talk about nonsense, but numbers do not
Really
lie.
true.
You have a bigger audience than anyone else in the podcasting space in construction. Am I right
No,
or am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't really follow it that much anymore. I just do it because I like podcasting. That's why I'm here today. I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but I'm here because I like podcasting.
It's good that you come along to have a chat with us. I've got a few questions to poke in your direction, and I'm sure you'll give us your brutally honest opinion as always. We've got Craig with us as well tonight from the usual Apprentice One-to-One crew. We're not focusing on any tech stuff and design stuff. We're going to get back to some of the core issues out of industry, and it's brilliant to have Craig here to help answer those things. So how are you this evening, Craig?
Very good, thank you. Busy as usual, so it's nice to get back round to these and have some chats and see what everyone else is up to.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite podcasts, to be fair. The design and tech talk ones are always nice, and we're going to have Richard and Dave back to finish that off soon. But sometimes just having a little chat around industry and some thoughts and views are a good place to start. And I thought we would have a little look into some of the things trainers can do to give some better value to their learners on limited budgets. I know we spoke about this offline, Craig, that some of the complaints trainers have that they don't get enough funding into their centres to deliver the training they want to do. And I know from your experience in your prior roles when you have been lecturing, you've got some things you've done to try and increase the value you can offer to your learners on those limited budgets. So I thought we'd have a delve into that one if you're up for it.
I'm not I'm not by any means an expert, but I think we rely an awful lot on having to have something. Like if we don't have a bit of conduit in the workshop, then it can't be good or it can't be beneficial, for example. We always rely on that we don't have enough materials and tools, but I just think there's more you can do if you try and be a little bit more creative in what you're doing. Like we first met in person by us doing a sponsored workshop install where we managed to get loads of equipment donated, and then we ended up doing a workshop build, and that wasn't something that was easy to come by, but that took a lot of effort of going out and chasing manufacturers and asking, and people started being willing to help, and that turned into the likes of yourself and Mikey and R Davis Electrical and all the others sort of culminated in a workshop in one day, and we ended up getting to build something quite nice. But it's just, I don't know, I think people need to get up a little bit more at times and not complain about some of the issues in industry because we know there is issues. But what else can be done? I mean, one of my favourites was always watching people teach risk assessments by standing there with a PowerPoint and talking about what a hazard is. Like, why we're not getting out and going to a building site, why we're not going out around a college or the workshops or getting people to explore what some of these things are in person and trying to make learning a bit more realistic rather than presentations in a classroom. Because I know when I go to training, I find presentations in a classroom quite boring. And I know some of the lectures out on social media and people that have done it in the past with some of the more famous faces of education. I know they've done what they've done on only a few £1,000 a year budget for consumables. And I would argue they still gave some of the best education out there. So it's what else can we kind of do to get up a bit and go and get something rather than just complaining that there's not enough funding attached to training, which I agree should be more, but it's not going to change anytime soon. So try to see what else people can do, relying on people like yourselves, relying on manufacturers, wholesalers. There's other ways to deliver better training than just complaining that there's not enough funding, in my opinion.
Do
I
you
think you're
think
right,
that's
and we've
do
we've seen a lot of stuff on the socials from eFix and GSH. I remember watching you, Sam, years ago now, going down to Tresham with Gaz and
that was
getting
one of my
involved.
greatest days, to be honest. I loved it. It was so much fun, and it was such a good crack. But what are you saying there about, um, you know, the sort of attitude that some of these lecturers have? I think it's the same in any sector. I think you certainly find it in construction. At the end of the day, a lot of these lecturers are construction workers, and what you have is, I've always said with construction workers, there's two types. There's a can do, will do, and a can't do, won't do. And I think that sort of mentality is what we're really talking about here. Is if you have a lecturer who's come in and they're not ready to give it all and they don't want to do the best job they possibly can, and then it's the easiest route is to moan about it. And they're a can't do, won't do. And it's not to disparage them, but it's just their mindset when they go into the job. And I think there is no silver bullet for that. You're not going to convince someone to try harder and do better just for nothing, because either they've got that mindset or they don't, or it's a learned mindset that they've sort of discovered. And I don't see that. I don't see how you're going to drum that into a lot of these people. I mean, you can give out cheat sheets. You can give out, I don't know, you could have a Apprentice one-to-one hub for lecturers where they can come and get ideas and contacts for people who want to reach out and help and stuff like that. You can lead a horse to walk, but you can't make it drink. And I do believe that, well, I don't actually know how you undo that mindset. I don't know if a lot of colleges care enough about the bottom line of the teaching to do anything about that mindset upon hiring. And often you can hire based on a lot of different criteria and questions and hope that you've got that guy. But generally the hiring process really comes down to a couple of weeks into it, you really know what you've got. So like they say, a new brush sweeps well. Well, you don't know that until you've trialed them.
That is so true. You don't. Sorry, Craig, go on.
I was just going to say it's right, but I think you have to remember why you go into education. And for me, and it's not a matter thing, but if you're wanting to earn a massive salary, then education is generally not the place that's going to be. If you want a work-life balance where, like the lecturers at my last college had 60 days holiday a year. So to me, you're earning a teacher's salary with 60 days holiday a year. So you're effectively working, what, months less than everybody else. If you want to go and top that income up, you can. You could go and work on site, you can go and do other bits, but teaching isn't the place you generally go for earning top money, if you like. I would say a good lecturer is probably somewhere between 35 and 40 grand in education generally, which to me isn't the worst when you then have 60 days holiday and a final salary pension, depending on what your career's been doing. But I think at that point, you need to be given what you can for that process. And what you said about what colleges look for in teaching, Sam, is sadly, it's not about the technical side.
They
What they
just want
look
someone
for
to
is,
turn up every day and on time, same as every other part of construction. The most
well,
important
obvious,
thing to a college is that that person turns up and does a class.
but also everything that's marked against, like Ofsted and all of these, they're bothered about, are you standing in class and talking about British values? Are you standing in class and talking about maths and English embedded into your day to day? That's what the college is getting graded on, not how good was your electrical knowledge and what you put across, unfortunately. So people spend all their time lesson planning and writing out schemes of work in different ways that the colleges want it to be. And actually, we should be playing to strengths of individuals. Most of us in this industry are not necessarily academic. Most of us are probably not the best with paperwork 95% of the time, but they go into a job that is so paperwork heavy that the paperwork is all you're judged on, that it takes away the creativity and the challenge of what you could do if you had a bit more of an industry reign, if you like, to do that.
If you're in a job like that, it's quite hard to get sacked if you are not ticking all the boxes. I think if I was going into a job like that, I would have my own set of principles and goals of what I wanted to achieve. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about really when it comes to all this, but considering like my mentality, so I had a massive mentality shift about, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, where I decided that I was going to just change the game for myself rather than going into a job and just doing the bare minimum, taking the bare minimum amount of tools and then complaining when someone asks you to bring in a laser or something. I just decided that I was going to go all guns blazing and do exactly what I wanted to do for me. Forget what the job requirement was, what other people around me wanted from me. I didn't care. I was going to turn up. I was going to do the best I could. I'm going to bring all my gear. I don't care who I upset, and I'm going to produce what they give me. I'm going to do the best I can at it. And if it's wrong or whatever, not interested. I'm just know that when I walk away from this job, it's the best it can be. And I think that mindset, that if you're going into a job like that and you're getting moaned at because you're not teaching people about British values and stuff, I simply wouldn't care. I'd be like, I don't care. Are they passing? Yes. Are they passing well? Yes. Don't care. Not interested. But that I have a maverick mindset, and I don't think many teachers do have a maverick mindset, because that's why they're teaching. It's because, you know, they might have health problems or something, and it's better than crawling around on your knees on site at 50 years old. There's a lot of these factors that go into these things. And I think, like I say, the quality of teaching is a mindset. Look at the legend himself, Gary Hayes, right? He's only really now known for EFIX and the success he's had at EFIX. But alongside EFIX, and well before EFIX, was obviously GSH Electrical, which was him at Tresham College producing content for his learners so as they could look back on. I think that was the original idea of it. I don't think he wanted to be a YouTube sensation like he is now. He just wanted to have like a record of his teachings so it made his learners have a library, if you like. Turns out it's the greatest library for electrical education that's ever been in any country in the world. It's the greatest library there is. And now, so not everyone's going to do that, but he went into that with, what can I do differently? What can I do better? How can I do the best I can at it with what I've got? So picking up a camera and recording the lesson, so as you've got, or recording specific bits off of the syllabus, so as people can have that to refer to, is thinking outside the box. It doesn't cost anything. It's all, and it's all it does is cost time, you know. And I think that sort of level of awareness and hustle, if you like, is not something that a lot of people will have. They're not getting into teaching to hustle. Gary's a very rare individual, like yourself, mate. Many years ago, you contacted me to do a few online sessions, and I'd have that conversation and stuff like that. But you was thinking out the box. You was hustling back then, and tell me if I'm wrong. Your ability to hustle is reason why your desire for the hustle is the reason why you're not in teaching now, is because you needed more. You knew you had more in you. And so I think if you have that hustling mindset going into teaching, I don't think it's going to be a long stay for you, or might be a long stay, but your trajectory when you're hustling is only ever up. It's never going to hustle to stay at the same level I are. No. So I think one of the questions we probably have to ask is, how do you keep hold of these incredible teachers who are hustling? Well, it's not going to be of money, because that's never coming from the college. That's never coming. It's not going to be progression, because who wants to be in charge of other construct? It's just, so there isn't really a way of keeping hold of these hustling teachers who are thinking outside the box, who are trying to do things differently. I don't know what the answer is then, because there is nothing keeping them in, is there? And I don't know if you go to someone like you go to like a private academy like the Maidstone Electrical Academy. They're fantastic, but again, it's private. So from their hustle, from them thinking outside the box, they created the Maidstone Academy, and they're hustling inside there, and their trajectory is only up. So maybe that's the future. Private training centres, small private training centres, is a way forward, and not colleges.
Yeah, possibly. I know FE are more have their hands behind the back, like Craig said, with some of the things they have to deliver in terms of the syllabus, and some of the private providers are maybe less tied to that. Obviously, I know in Apprentice 1-to-1, I get a lot of people coming in with complaints, like the learners and even the trainers themselves. Through the course of developing the new apprenticeship standard, there was lots of discussion and unhappiness with the funding bans. These are from people who earn training centres. You know, they didn't consider it enough money to be able to recruit the quality of lecturers that they needed in the numbers that they needed either. So they've got waiting lists of students wanting to get enrolled and start apprenticeships, but they can't afford to put it in place. So that's kind of a higher overview level, if you like, of looking at training electricians of the future. There is a demand there for it, but some of the providers don't want to put the training on because they can't afford to employ the lecturers, which is bad. And then you've got the learners coming through who are saying they're going to college, they don't have electrical lecturers at the front of the classroom, for example. They've got substitute teachers that are changed from month to month. They're going through the retrainee route where they're in there full time, taking in their learning and getting to a set point where they can't complete their training. So they can't go and do the workplace logbooks and their AM2s, aside from when some of the owners of these training providers are offering them work experience that they go and do free of charge, basically labouring for them, which is another sketchy area of training in the UK, in my opinion. So it's really difficult. I don't know the answers. And like I say, I'm aware that most people come to me moaning, so it might not be as bad as I think it is, but it doesn't look great, in my opinion. Don't know what you guys think on that.
Well, part of the problem is, sorry, Sam, is
No,
it's
go on, Craig.
systemic, right? We haven't had good apprenticeships for however many years in the industry now. We don't have the best jobs. So how can you get the best quality people coming from industry, trained to the best standard to give that to education?
Do you think it could be a lot of the problems in the electrical industry on a wider scale, I believe, comes from not having a central governing body? So like the Grand Council of the electrical industry.
That is what it should be called as well.
Yeah, the Supreme Grand Council of the electrical industry. And I should be the supreme leader.
We know it.
His Excellency. Right. But so they should set the terms and conditions of all areas of the electrical industry. A group of people who passionately care about the industry and want to and know what areas need to grow at what time based on their overview. But the electrical industry is very fragmented. It has a lot of different governing bodies that do different things in different areas. None of them communicate with each other very well. So there's not like a place that they can go to and say, right, well, training's a bit crap over here. Well, apprenticeships are crap over here. Oh, well, we're not making enough money here. These regs over here. Like if they had someone that could bring all that together and sort of weigh up what's more important at the moment, what needs to be propped up to bring that up, and just a bigger governing picture, I think would help a lot across the whole industry. But again, I think it's fragmented for a reason. I think it's fragmented because that's how people are making a lot of money from it. And like having a grand council is more of a wishful thinking, best case scenario. You know, it's sad because the electrical industry, as it stands, is still a great thing, but there's so many holes and so many problems. I don't really know. I don't really know outside of having the grand council where these problems start to be fixed. Because if you look at the training sector, who sets the standards for the training centre, Mark?
In terms of the courses that are offered,
who sets the standards across the board?
Like the city and guilds,
city and guilds, but they do all different ones.
Through,
and then
through off quals, it's all
what's
kind
this
of built.
test?
So TESPA, like the Electrotechnical Skills Partnership, basically the ECA and other areas of industry come together and discuss the best routes in education for industry.
So they would be like a grand council of...
That's kind of the closest we've got, to be fair, on an education view. Would you say that, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with city and guilds and stuff is they set the benchmark to be qualified. What they don't manage is the quality of delivery in any of the organisations. So from their point of view, if they send somebody in once a year, twice a year, depending on how many students you've got, all they are generally looking at is the portfolios in front of them. And if they're filled in correctly, the exams are passed correctly, then that's their job done and that's the end of their quality assurance. They're not actually checking the quality of the training that's taking place as an organisation.
Let's be honest,
that's where there's a gap.
Let's be honest, how boring of a job would it be to go around and check that the MVQs are done properly? Mate, how boring must that be? Like, no wonder it's not being done properly, because that is a crappy job from 1962 that's still being done today. Put it in a computer, have some AI check it, for Christ's sake. It's just like, that is not a job.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, that is not a job anyone wants to do. I'm sure of it. Like,
Well,
not even Jamie.
you've got loads of them. They work for city. They work for all one bodies. But city and guilds, for example, you'll have an external verifier. They're called. That person will maybe have, let's say, they have 100 centres, and across the course of the year, they just go and visit each of those colleges once or twice a year and check that the folders and the qualifications are being done in the correct way.
Do you imagine how crap that job is? I'd shoot myself. Would.
Sound like you want to apply, mate. It's one of those, isn't it? It's one of the jobs that need doing as part of the training still. And, you know, when we're talking about the complaints again, some of the learners in and around all this, and you spoke about this on a podcast with me before, Sam, about self-responsibility. So if you're not getting the training that you would want or expect, you're not changing that. We've already said that, haven't we? Basically, it isn't
See, this
changing.
is a great point.
It's not going to change drastically in the immediate future. So if you're on that path now, you know, what are the things you can do in terms of your own self-responsibility to give yourself a better prospect of coming out qualified and able to get a job as an electrician? That's what everyone wants.
Well, this is a great point, Mark, actually. And it does come back to self-responsibility. And exactly, if you're training to be an electrician and you just put all your trust in the training centre to tell you everything you need to know, and you're going to pop out and be able to do anything on the other side, then one, you're deluded, and two, you're being very lazy. When learning anything, like, I just watched this thing about David Beckham on Netflix, right? He had a natural talent. He was very good at football. But what he did on top of that, he didn't just go to training. He would stay an hour and a half behind kicking the ball, doing free kicks, just bring out a radio, turn it right up, just be kicking the ball for an hour and a half every day. He trained really hard in and outside to be the best he could be. And that sort of drive and determination is, you know, if you had 10% of that when you're doing your qualifications as an electrician, as a learner, you only need 10% of that, 5% of that, and you're going to come out the other side a lot better. You can't leave your own education in the hands of these people. Remember, they're just people. They're not gods. They're not going to bestow the knowledge upon you so you come out ornated as the great electrician. You have to put the work in behind the scenes. And I think that is something probably that isn't taught enough by lecturers.
That's fair.
I think that should be like a key principle that a lecturer drills into you. This is a guidance. The hard work is on your shoulders.
It has to be, because you look at how long the qualifications are. So if you went on Sitting Guild's website and you looked at, say, the level 2 electrical qualification, for example, it'll tell you the guided learning hours is something like 480 guided learning hours. The college will get paid for something like 300 of those hours. So there's immediately 180 hours of learning not going to be taught in college, like, of the knowledge you're supposed to have to be deemed competent as a level 2 electrician.
One of the things when I was doing my qualification is a lot of people didn't want to do two-way and three-way lighting. Like, they would do anything to swerve that, or swerve doing the pyro lesson, or if they were house bashers, they would try and swerve doing the trunking and stuff like that. And I think and that goes relatively unnoticed. You get the person next to you to do something for you, and it's like, oh yeah, you've done that, brilliant. No one's really checking the competency of you doing that. And I think I think that it might be the responsibility of a lecturer, rather than just teaching electrical qualification and how to do things, is teaching a mindset, is trying to get a mindset into people where they attack these things that they don't want to do head on. Mike Tyson famously said, or was it Mike Tyson or one of the boxers, that famously said, like, discipline and success comes from doing something you don't want to do like you love it.
There's a lot
So
of truth in that, I think, isn't there? There really
do you know
is.
what I mean? So it's just a matter of like getting into it and doing it like you love it. And then if you have that mindset taught and knocked into you at the beginning of your career, you're going to have a fantastic career, because it took me many years to get that in my head. Like, I was 35 or something by the time I got that in my head. But if I'd have got that in my head at 2022, coming out of college, I would have been smashing it. And so I think it's very unfortunate. But again, someone who's a bit of a, you know, just treading water to get through life isn't going to be able to teach you that mindset, because it's not their mindset. It's a tough one, isn't it? It's chicken and egg.
But is it a society issue as well, though? And I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I'm just trying to think of questions. Is it, having been someone stood in front of classes and classes of students and asking them why? Because this way you have to separate colleges and say private training providers, because the colleges are generally, the government's told everybody, and I'm not political, so it's not a Tory over Labour, it's just generally
No.
governments tell everybody you must now be in education till you're 18. If you've been a little pain in the bum at school, the schools can kick you out and the colleges have to take you, because the schools can be selective on who goes to A levels, whereas the colleges can't. They have to take you. So you can end up with a class, and within that class, there might be two people that actually want to be electricians. Everybody else has just been told, go and get a job. Whereas private
You can't
training,
help that, can you? You can't, like, there's no solution to that. You can't teach people to be good at something if they don't want to be good at it. They just want to get a qualification so they can say. That's the other thing is as well. I think one of the easiest things is to say you're an electrician. I get it all the time. Oh yeah, I was an electrician, and I'm fixing a light for, and I'm like, was you? So why aren't you doing this yourself? Oh, I wasn't really very good at it. Da, da, da. And yeah, I just went into sales. All right, brilliant. You was never an electrician. Let's have this straight. You was never an
You're not
electrician.
getting someone round to change a light for you if you was ever
But
an electrician.
do you know what I mean? Like you meet these people all the time. Oh, my uncle's an electrician. He installs CCTV. Well, he's not. Do you know what I mean? I think the term electrician's not really very protected. I think people can call themselves an electrician once they've done a level 2 or something. Like level 2, they're at college. Oh, yeah, he's an electrician. Well, he's not. He's not. And this is why I think someone like me, and, you know, it comes back to the gold card conversation. Gold card's meaningless. But where it does have a meaning, where it's meaningless when it comes to showing competency and on site, but its true meaning is you are a qualified electrician on any site in the UK once you have your gold card. You can still be in it, like, look at Bundy, right? And even Savo to an extent. They don't have their gold cards, but they are as good as you can be without a gold card. They are electricians, signed, sealed, and delivered. The problem is they're not an electrician on any site in the UK. They could they smash me at pretty much every single aspect of being an electrician, but they can't walk onto any site in the UK and say you're an electrician. And that sort of void, that sort of gap between being an electrician and saying you're an electrician is what muddies the water, and it stops. And it, like, if you could do your level 3 and read the book and be really into it and not get the other qualifications to get your gold card, and still say you're an electrician and still be able to go and get your NAPIT and your NIC, even though you can't get a gold card, I think it's ridiculous. The standards to which an electrician is held to, as far as qualifications are concerned, should really be across the board. There should be an industry standard of what an electrician is, and there can't be one standard higher than another. It has to be the same standard. So where Nick and Savo don't have a gold card, but they can go and get their NIC, they can go and get their NAPIT, but they can't go on any site in the UK and be called an electrician. So they can't go to a commercial site and be called electrician because they ain't got a gold card. But they can be called electrician by the governing body that signs off that job. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how
think they've
mad
all-
that is?
It is mad. I think they've recognised that's a problem. It was like the abuse that took place by some of the gatekeepers of maybe the last 15 years or so. And
More
the
than that.
EAS document is that standard you're talking about, Sam. So that's now been changed. So the CPSs marry up with what the gold card standard is essentially. If you want to go into their membership as a QS, you now have to reach that standard. Obviously, because of grandfather rights and all the stuff that's gone on for this last 15 years, if you're already in, then you're in, because it's not really your fault, is it? You play the
So
rules.
they have changed that. So say
yeah, they have changed it. So you play the rules of the game at the time, don't you? So people like Savo and Nick or whoever else, that's
and
the
I'm
rules
not
of the game.
disparaging in them in any way, shape, or
not
form.
at all.
What I'm saying is, how mad is that dichotomy that you can sign off the job that you're not allowed to work on as an electrician, but you can sign it off as an electrician?
Crazy, innit? It started as Part P, and I think it just got worse and worse. Training maybe blew it up alongside some of the CPSs.
I think that's what's made the term electrician so easily achievable.
For sure.
And therefore, people who go to college go, well, I've done my level 3. I don't need to do all the other bits and pieces to be an electrician. I'll just go on. And so it already institutes a mindset that you don't have to complete the full course. You can complete some of it and be an electrician. So you're already cutting corners.
Well, some of the
Which is
faster routes.
ironic.
Go on, Craig. Sorry.
I was going to say, which is ironic, because when you look in the City and Guilds handbook, the first thing it says when you start in college and everybody has to sign on day one says, this qualification does not make me an electrician without my NVQ.
That's what I was just going to say. Lots of training providers don't make that point known, do they? Either they hide that away.
Okay, see, I'm completely out of the loop, but historically it did though.
Yeah,
you only needed your 2330 or whatever it was, like the City and Guilds qualification, your 18th edition and Part P. You can go and get your NAPIT and your NIC. You're sweet. You can go start changing Doris's plug sockets.
You can still get them now, even though as good intentioned as a CES document is. And I think that's what TESPN are trying to monitor now, isn't it, Mark? Is it that like you go to say NIC or NAPIT, for example, and you go, well, I want to join. Have you got an NVQ? They go, no, but if you sign up to this NAPIT or NIC NVQ on our own training that we deliver for you, we'll let you into the scheme now. And then, you just have to have X amount of years to complete it. So by them being allowed to be training providers, as well as governing bodies, they can make their own loopholes to the document that's meant to be the gatekeeper by the people that are meant to be managing it. And that's why TESP and stuff are doing this scheme now, aren't they, about what is gold mark training and stuff, what's actually the
Electrician Plus.
done. Yeah.
Yes, I think, didn't you talk about that the other day, the Electrician Plus qualification and that?
Yeah, I think
break that down for me a little bit.
There's a few rogue, well, I'm calling them rogue, but there's a few training providers out there who are offering easier routes, if you like, into industry, and TESP want to kind of mark that out without marking it out. So they're marking other people up saying we're Electrician Plus, where they're at the standard that they want to see, which they can't exclude. And I don't know, it's all political, isn't it? For all the reasons you just said, Sam.
But do you see, we're at that same level of bullshit again. What is an electrician? What constitutes being qualified as an electrician? There's about 10 different accepted versions of what a qualified electrician is. You can be an electrician with an 18th edition and a 2391 and be able to be an electrician. That don't make no sense. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think to be an electrician, you've got to do an apprenticeship. I think you've got to do, and when I say do an apprenticeship, it doesn't mean you've got to go and sweep the floors for 2 years. How can you go to college, learn what you need to learn at college, and then go and apply that into the real world without having at least 2 years experience working with someone in that field? You just can't do it. And if you do, you're a liability, and the chances are you're going to put in some real rubbish work, and that's just not acceptable. And this whole thing boils down to the same thing. There's no governing body. There's not one definition of what an electrician is. There's not one guiding principle for the training industry. It's just broken down into little sectors so people can maximize profits in each sector, and it's fine. But then don't moan when rubbish electricians come through the system, because there is no answer to that then, is there?
No, I mean, that's fair as an industry oversight, isn't it? If you're stood there analysing all this, saying it's garbage, then it needs uprooting and starting again. But if you're going through your training now, pulling back to what you said, Sam, where you're next to someone who's doing some pyro for you, if you're in a training environment and you've got an opportunity to learn something with your employer or at college, grasp it. Don't be scared of it, because that is going to set you apart when you are down the road into industry, getting better jobs and having more prospects of getting site work. Because you know how to do stuff ultimately. The best time to learn is when you're in your training phase. So take all of it in. Don't be running away from stuff.
So one of the things I'm going to give you guys a bit of a sneak preview into next week's podcast, and it's around, are women better sparks than men? And I have a bit of a theory about this. You know, if you're standing with a group of 10 men, right, and you're all doing the same task, no one in that group wants to be the worst. So
True.
It's an ego thing, right? So none of the guys want to be the worst. So there'll be one or two that are the best, straight naturals. Whatever they're doing, they're good. Their hand skills are better than everyone else's, and they just pick it up like a sponge. Then the rest are going to be there, and they're going to be working harder to do it. And then there's going to be a couple there looking around going, I ain't got a clue. I can't even do this. And then they're going to find ways of cheating. Or not cheating, but if I do this, I'll swap that one with that one. And all of a sudden, because no one wants to look like a div. Whereas the girls, they don't have that problem. They're not trying to be the best. They are just they're gonna assimilate the information, and they're gonna do it. And if they don't beat the guy, they don't care. They sort of just want to learn more. And I wonder if that sort of classroom attitude is part of the problem as well, because ego is a massive problem. No one wants to be the worst person in the class, and if it means sacrificing learning to ask a dumb question, they're not going to do that. They're just going to be like, oh, I'd rather not ask a question instead of looking like an idiot, because the other guys in the class will laugh at you for asking a dumb question. And then you're going to get a nickname like Dumb Question Boy or whatever, right? And that's you done. So it is, but that's what a group of guys will do no matter what. But I wonder if that's a problem in the class, where people don't want to fall behind it. Well, be perceived to be behind. If they can fake it till they make it, they will. And if that means sacrificing good learning early on, and I'll learn it another time just to stay with the crowd, perhaps that's what they're doing. Again, we're talking a bit sociologically about this, but I think these are a lot of things that factor into the college learning environment. And perhaps that is something that lecturers can do better at identifying, and maybe sort of trying to navigate that a bit better.
I think a huge amount of this is it's easy to put it back to the lecturers, sort of coming around and looking at it from both sides of the sector. Generally, if you've got an apprentice, they do 20% of their learning in college.
Yeah.
The other 80% has got to be on site with the employers. And you're right, you get a culture in a class where people won't ask questions. And there's nothing worse. Stood teaching a session. So I was teaching at the weekend, and I was doing earthing systems. And we started talking about the IT earthing system. And I know for a fact, most people in that classroom, and these are all adults that paid a lot of money to be there, so they're not 16-year-olds trying to be cool with their mates, didn't understand what we spoke about when you talk about fault one, fault two, and earthing when it comes to IT earthing systems, and actually flipping it that we're not trying to chip breakers, we're trying to keep low currents and everything else. Nobody asked though. And they've paid a lot of money to be sat there for that question. So if you're 16, you may be a bit fresh, depending on where you've come from, like in life and what background you've come from. Being that person that stands out, we've lost that love of learning. We've got a lifestyle now where everything's at the touch of a button. And if it's not, we're not willing to put any effort in to go and find that out. And employers need to be almost encouraging that with the lecturers to say, look, you need to be going away and reading this. You need to be going and looking at that. You need to be understanding why we're doing these tests, because if they can learn it and feel safe at work, then maybe that will come back into the classroom with doing that as well. But as you say, site is an interesting place, and ridicule will be first on the agenda of anybody rather
Of
than
course it
the
will.
agenda of learning.
Of course it will.
Yeah.
I think you strike another good point there, Craig, about going away and learning yourself. We're very fortunate in this day and age, incredibly fortunate that we have the internet. We have people like Mark, Gary, and just to name a few that are putting out great content that you can learn from. You could, and to an extent, there is things to be learned from the content, like site banters, like problems and mindsets. When you watch some like Bundy's videos and you'll see him weigh up a situation, you can almost get an apprentice, not an apprenticeship, but you can add on to your apprenticeship with these learning situations that you watch on this YouTube content. By no means am I saying Bundy's YouTube content is educational or something like that, but there is, in all of these videos, even when you listen to our podcast, which is usually 99% nonsense, what you're going to be able to extract from it is real life scenarios, real life problems that we've been in and we've talked about. And you can pull the psychology out of that for you to bolster your knowledge when you're going into these situations. So there's a great deal of content that's never existed in the whole of history that you can extract real learning material from. Not necessarily just technical, but also some life lessons, some mindset lessons, some way to handle situations and stuff. There's no one's ever talked this much about the electrical industry ever and recorded it. It's not a thing.
It's not, and you can go off and watch Dave O'Saver wrestle someone over a dispute. You can see that on YouTube. There's all these things you don't get taught in college where you will have those things flare up in your career, and it's how you deal with it. And Nick is a great one. I say he's an educational channel from his install work, but also just a real world managing your customers, looking after material orders. He covers everything, doesn't he? It's like raw as well. So it's not overly edited. You're really seeing his day to day, and you can get a lot from that. So that's one of the things you can do as a trainee yourself, is taking all this content in your own time. And when you are at college, try and get the most from it you can. When you're with your employers, the same. Take from every circumstance, every little bit of value you can. And if there's an opportunity anywhere, grab it, because it is a bit of a crap storm out in training. So make the best of every single thing all along the way you can.
It might be, sorry, Craig, it might be the worst it's ever been as far as the lecturing side's concerned. I don't know. I haven't got a clue about that. But it's still the best it's ever been for finding data and knowledge. So it just, really, there is an excuse to be shit now. There really isn't.
It's fair. There's so much fair. Sorry, Craig, go on.
Going back to the original point, it doesn't always have to be about money. Simple things like using the people's content out there. I know I'm a weird person in life, but I think if you take any encounter and you don't learn something from it, good or bad, you've not listened to what happened in that situation, because you can always learn. And having simple things like Google Classroom or other online platforms, I know people use Teams and everything else, and just embedding people like Gary Hare's videos, or even Nick's videos, or Dave's, or anybody, Joe Robinson, putting any of that stuff, just share it. Look, here we go. We've done earthing systems. Go and watch this video about this. It doesn't have to be about how you spend money and how you spend your time. You can direct people to heaps of information that gives them every opportunity. It goes back to one of the things Sam said at the start about can't lead the horse to water, or however it goes. Like, if you give it to them and they don't want to watch it, or they don't want to learn it, and you're that learner that doesn't want to watch it or doesn't want to learn it in your own time, then you're probably in the wrong industry, because we are all part of the industry that probably asks the most of you to keep up to date year on year.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I would say that, the amount of CPD that you have to do to stay relevant in the industry, not the nonsense CPD like reading the instructions out of a light bulb packet or something. I'm talking about real CPD, which is exactly what we do with the 18th edition. It's exactly what we do when we're brushing up on our ECS card and stuff like that. That's real CPD, continual professional development, by learning the new rules and regs as they come out. That's I don't think there's many other industries where they require that amount of CPD. I hate using that word because it's so muddied now. It's such a load of old bull.
But it's kind of, you are right though, it's the same thing. And I would just almost leave it on the fact of if you can't be bothered to do that when you're new to industry in college, how do you expect to still be being bothered to do that 25 years later when you're trying to call this a career? And I think that leads us to some of the issues we have now.
Oh, absolutely. Jamie has always been banging on about something which is really starting to resonate now.
No outdoor fuse boxes, is it? Because I'm sick of that.
No, it's not. It's about like specializing, and you're only going to specialize if you are continually trying to improve. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you can't just be a generic spark, and those that do really will suffer further down their career, like I am now. You know, I'm really scurrying around to try and get myself into a specialism and roll with it before my time is up, if you like. And I think these are some real valuable lessons. Getting a so if you have the mentality going into your apprenticeship and your learning phase, or deep learning phase, you'll be able to, and you go with the mentality of learning, and you continue that deep learning phase going forwards. Learning a speciality and being even more successful further down your career is going to come easy because you've always had that mentality, that mindset. But I suppose, you know, is it the survival of the most adaptable, the survival of the fittest? Is it that same old thing? Some people are born to do well. Some people are just going to be crap.
It's true. There's so many questions around all this, and I think we've dug into it before, and we've talked about apprenticeship recruitment. It's a mess in a lot of places. I think there's lots of great little tips that you guys have shared on this podcast for anyone who is going through training right now, because that's kind of my focus, helping these people who are trying to come out as sparks. You've done it yourself, Sam, in the past 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was, and forced your way through into industry as someone entering later on, and you're here now still doing it. So it can be done. People are doing it all the time. It's one of the things that need to keep repeating. It is possible. There's lots of people who just give up and drop away. I think that's a bit sad, really.
Do you know what, though? I think years ago, when I was young and healthy and fit and stuff, I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a submission grappling, wrestling with submissions and stuff. And the statistic back then was 85% of people who start won't ever get past a blue belt, which is your first belt. Each belt takes years and years. There's only 5 belts. So, and I wonder if that is like a more of a broader thing. People that start things, out of the people that start things, maybe only 15% actually continue on with them. Because it is actually quite difficult to start something new. It is quite difficult to do a job professionally like we have to for a long period of time. Certainly if you're coming from another trade or industry, I think it's quite difficult. And I think that drop-off rate is probably a rule of thumb rather than actually something unique to our industry.
I think that's fair. And there's someone who's going through that now who's been on this podcast called Matt Telford. And he actually got a job off the back of coming on here and talking and put himself out there. So that's someone who's making those extra efforts, doing things that's uncomfortable on social media from, I don't think it's anything they really wanted to do. But they made that effort. They got themselves a job with a guy called Adam. So a huge shout out to Adam, who I know is listening to the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast. And it's nice to see those things happen, just as a little happy note to kind of draw this chat to a close. And also to mention the ECN Awards. I spoke about this in your podcast, Sam, and kind of brushed over it a bit because people often assume with Apprentice 1-to-1, it's just me. But this award is for Apprentice 1-to-1 more widely. And people like yourselves have elevated that to places it would not be without that help. So you, Sam, right from the start, where you've pushed this forward in front of everyone's faces in the way only you can, whether people like it or not, has helped us get to where we are. And Craig, giving all of your time in terms of doing these podcasts, helping people offline and sharing your thoughts and views around training. This is an award for everybody who has ever had any involvement, whatever size, shape, or form.
Only way I'll ever get an
Apprentice 1-to-1. So are you going to come to the award ceremony?
Yeah. Can't wait.
It's in Birmingham.
Docile.
Yourself, Craig, are you going to be there?
Yeah, mate, we've already been chatting about that offline, haven't we? And we're going to get a table or whatever and sort it out and have a bit of a nice night of it.
Suppose I'll come, but I don't listen. There's other people well ahead of me that need to be going to that. I'll fill some numbers, no problem. And I'll just go there to upset everyone. I'm quite good at that. If I had an ability, a super ability, it's upsetting people and farting.
There's some interesting people potentially going to be there, so it could be quite a fun night to enjoy.
Indeed.
Well, anything else you would either of you like to add before we close this one? I'm just going to say basically what we've kind of covered all the way through. If you're in training, take in everything you can, take all the social media content in, get yourself out there with your employers and ask questions of your trainers. Actually, that's a good point to finish on. One of the students who came forward with a complaint about the lecturer had said that the lecturer had told them you can't pat test IEC leads. It's impossible. And he'd been with his employer all that week doing exactly that job. And actually in the college, while they were there having the lesson, there was some external contractors in doing pat testing on detachable IEC leads. So don't believe everything your lecturers tell you. If
What's
you
an
think
IEC lead?
Like one of the plug-in leads for your laptop charger and your monitor, the lead that pulls
Is that
out.
what it's called?
I think so. So that's
wow.
that's
my
what they
CPD today.
That's what they were saying
down.
couldn't be tested. And they raised that question with the lecturer. I think that's important. Push back, ask questions. Don't just take everything as gospel from your employer or your trainers. You want to learn stuff, ask questions.
Yeah, I'd just say even if you're not happy to ask questions in the college, there's enough people online offering help and support. Ask them there as well.
Don't be lazy. Go and work hard at what you want to do, and don't be a bum. Is my solution.
Cheers for that, guys. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me tonight. I would say go and follow Sam's stuff on his podcast, but anyone listening to this will already be watching. There will be a link in the description, though, if you aren't aware of it. Make sure you do take it in. If you've got any questions in around the discussion we've had here tonight, please do also drop them in below. Get involved in the discussion over on social media, and we will see you on the next one.
Cheers, all. Bye.